Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. So, Filthy Rich is the #1 trending show, movie, whatever you'd like to call it, on Netflix right now in the United States of America. That is exactly what I thought it would do. I thought it would be one of those types of shows where it draws people in and gets people more interested in the case, and then what they do is they begin researching things on their own. And we're starting to see that already in this case. And the fact that it's the #1 trending show on Netflix right now does not surprise me in the least. I knew that was going to occur. Every single time Netflix has a documentary like this, a true crime documentary like this, it is always #1. It's always the talk around the water cooler, right? And this is no different. I've received so many texts and calls and emails from friends and family and people who really haven't been following this case, who watched the documentary, who have had their jaws were just on the ground. And they were nowhere, they had no idea the extent of this, what occurred, who was involved, how far it went, that it went across continents. They have no idea. And that is why I call them the Unsullied. So there are definitely some criticisms about this documentary, and I'll go into those later on tonight. But I think the overall picture that's being painted here is that this case is gaining more steam than it's had. And more people are interested right now than have ever been. My girlfriend's sister really had no interest in the case, right? Never really paid attention to what was going on. I doubt she even listened to the podcast before recently. Well, she watched the documentary and she could not take her eyes off of it, she said. She said that she couldn't stop watching it. So that just goes to show you that's one example of people who really had no interest in the case who are just locked in now. And I have tons of stories like that from friends. So I think the documentary, in my opinion, is doing what I thought it would do. Of course, like I said from the jump, I doubt it's going to break anything groundbreaking, right? Stuff we don't know about, stuff we haven't discussed here on the podcast. It's not breaking news. But what the Netflix documentary is doing is it's shining a light on this disastrous, no good, disgusting problem. And finally, it's starting to get the interest that it deserves. People are starting to take notice. People are starting to realize just what occurred here, who took part in it, and how many very, very powerful people littered the playing field. And with a platform like Netflix and the reach that Netflix has, forget it. People are enraged over this right now. The emails I've been receiving I'm talking about a burning hot white rage over what occurred. And the fact that justice still has not been brought to these co-conspirators is enough to make people's heads spin. They can't believe it. People just can't believe what's occurring here, and neither can I. Can you imagine all this circumstantial evidence along with the real tangible evidence and still no arrests? And still we're forced to sit here and discuss this on a daily basis here on this podcast? Here's a really great idea. Why doesn't the federal government go ahead and arrest all of these people, bring them all to justice, and let these ladies get some closure and move on with their lives? Why are you drawing it out, Attorney General Berman? There's no excuse at this point. All of these people need to be arrested. RICO charges for everybody, and then a huge, gigantic raid. You know how they raid the mafia or drug dealers, where everybody gets raided at once? How about we see a little bit of that? Do the children not matter? What, is there no money for you to make here, so we'll turn the other cheek? It's an absolute dereliction of duty by the federal government in this regard. But my hope is, with the new documentary and with it trending so well, that they're going to be forced to take action. So many people are going to be enraged and outraged and fed up by all of this once they start researching it for themselves and they start figuring out that this has all been Not a conspiracy theory like the dumpster fire of the legacy media has told them, but an actual cover-up. Once they get to that point and they understand what they're dealing with here, oh boy, the fire is going to be white hot. Is going to be absolutely burning hot. Because people are tired of getting lied to. People are tired of being gaslit. And they're tired of fake news from every single outlet, it seems like. How hard is it just to tell the truth? How hard is it to ask the hard questions? How hard is it to do your job? Obviously pretty hard for the legacy media considering they failed these survivors for decades. Obviously pretty hard for the legacy media because they continue to gaslight us. But the one thing, the shining light, is the fact that we can bypass them now and go directly to the people who were involved in the situation. Go directly to independent journalists, directly to independent content creators. It's the last bastion of truth. And more people are searching out outlets like that than ever before because there is no trust in the legacy media. And stories like this, oh boy, they go a long way to help erode whatever trust was left. So tonight I'll be breaking down episode 1 on the Daily Drop, and then we'll go from there. But today on the show there is an article from Decider.com, and the headline is Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich, the 9 most shocking revelations. And this article was authored by Kayla Cobb. Now, of course, remember, to us, these revelations are all things that we have known previously, right? This is not breaking news to us. But to the people, the unsullied, this is all mind-numbing stuff, right? Stuff they had no idea about for the most part. Now, remember when you first started learning about this case? Remember how blown away you were when you started learning some of these facts? Well, that's how most of the people who watched the documentary for the first time are feeling right now. So, while we might be locked in, there are a lot of other people where some of this information hit them like a bag of bricks dropping from a roof. Any story about powerful men abusing vulnerable young women is horrifying. But Netflix's latest docuseries transforms one of the most notorious sex crimes cases in modern history into a waking nightmare. By painstakingly outlining the intricate system of recruiters, popular celebrities, and immensely powerful politicians, Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich, makes it clear that this was never the case of one evil man. It was an elaborate system of sexual abuse and rape designed to prey on children. And while that is definitely the case, they still missed the point here. It wasn't just about the abuse of the children. It was about the whole entire scheme. And the abuse of the children was the major plot point, right? Because they know you can survive a scandal of cheating on your wife. You can survive stepping out on your relationship. What you cannot survive politically is being with children. And that is why it was set up in this fashion. For most of his career, Jeffrey Epstein was known as a mega-rich and mega-powerful businessman. That all changed around the time of the 2016 election when his horrific history of sexual abuse started to come to light. All right, well, they're about 8 years off here, huh? It all started to change after his first arrest, not the second arrest. But I guess what they're trying to say is after 2016, it went beyond the pale, right? The real story started to show its ugly face, and his lapdogs in the media could no longer control the narrative, and the truth was starting to finally be shown to everybody who was paying attention. This docuseries rewrites Epstein's life and controversial death not as a punchline for lazy jokes and conspiracy theories, but as a true tale of horror from the mouths of the survivors. Much of the 4-hour documentary is hard to watch, but there are some revelations that are even more shocking than you may expect. Number 1. Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking operation was discovered by accident. Perhaps the most shocking revelation of this docuseries happens only a few minutes into its runtime. Jeffrey Epstein's intricate and long-running sex trafficking operation wasn't the target of some well-informed journalist. Instead, it was uncovered almost completely by accident. In 2003, Vicky Ward was assigned a profile on Epstein by her editor for Vanity Fair. The profile was supposed to be a somewhat shallow explainer on one of the richest men in the world no one had heard of. But during her investigation, Ward uncovered rumors that Epstein was known for abusing and raping underage women. These accusations led her to Maria and Annie Farmer, two of the first victims to speak about their abuse on the record. Well, we all know the story now about Vicky Ward and how she conducted herself in regards to Maria and Annie. And I don't really think that Vicky Ward should have been given the screen time that she was given on the documentary. I think that there were plenty of other people they could have, slotted in that role. What about the director? What about, whoever, but not Vicky Ward. After hearing Maria's account of Vicky Ward and the way Vicky Ward handled herself and acted, I have zero tolerance for that lady. And honestly, I was turned off watching her speak on the documentary. I wish it was somebody else narrating. That was one of my biggest criticisms of the documentary, in fact, was that Vicky Ward was involved at all. After Epstein caught wind of the changing direction of the story, he started to threaten Ward, claiming that he would get a witch doctor to put a curse on her unborn twins. Graydon Carter, the editor of Vanity Fair at the time, even found a severed cat head in his garden and a bullet on his doorstep, both believed to be tied to Epstein. The story was later pulled. Well, this witch doctor stuff always made me shake my head. Jeffrey Epstein's going to get a witch doctor to put a curse on you? What does that even mean? What is he going to recruit, some sort of shaman to come and put a curse on you? And what it does is it makes you wonder if the talk about all that occult stuff really rings true, right? Because again, as I've told you numerous times, that's way out of my realm of understanding. I'm not big on the occult. I don't understand the symbolism. I don't understand any of that stuff. That's why I don't really talk about it here. I try and stay in my lane. I try and talk about the things I understand. And when it comes to that occult stuff, I don't understand it. Now, I'm not saying that there's nothing that has nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein's case because, again, I don't understand the ins and outs of it. But what I will tell you this, there sure is a lot of weird stuff that looks to me like it has something to do with the occult when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein. But I'll let other people more capable talk about that kind of stuff. And to be honest with you, it's something that I really should dive into at some point and try and educate myself on. But it's just, there's so much going on in this case that it's hard to dive into something like that at this point because I gather that the occult is, it's a long story to understand just exactly how that sort of thing plays a part within this story. So again, that's something I won't touch on, but the fact that he was talking about witch doctors and shit gives some credence to all of that. Number 2. Epstein's partner, Ghislaine Maxwell, would often recruit girls. And again, to us, this is all common knowledge, right? This is like waking up and tying your shoes type stuff. We all know this. But to those who might not be following the case, new subscribers, new listeners, this might all be new to them. So I think it's important that we talk about it and we add it to the catalog. Ghislaine Maxwell, along with Sarah Kellen, Nadia Marcinkova, and Adriana Musinska, all recruited Epstein's survivors. Kellen, Marcinkova, and Musinska, it's funny they leave Leslie Groff out of here, but as you all know, we're talking about, the core 4 here. Marcinkova and Musinska worked for Epstein and would target high school-aged women. How about high school-aged girls? What does that even mean? If you're in high school, you're not a woman yet. Typically under the premise that they were being hired as a masseuse. They would also target young artists, students, and aspiring models in need of money. That's when Ghislaine Maxwell would sweep in. Maxwell would often ask these women to massage her before turning them over to Epstein. Maxwell has denied any involvement in Epstein's underage sex trafficking operation, but we all know that she's being accused by at least 3 different girls of not only procurement, but also of engaging in molestation as well. And that's why it's such a big deal that that article came out about Maxwell and Clinton having an affair. It's not just like Clinton's having an affair with somebody. That's whatever. We expect that from Bill Clinton. The fact that he's having an affair with an accused pedophile, my friends, yeah, that kind of launches the conversation into a different realm. Number 3, the allegations against Epstein go back further than most realize. Though the allegations against Epstein started gaining national attention around 2016, he had victims long before then. 2 of his earliest known victims, survivors, Maria and Annie Farmer, claim that their abuse started in 1996. Additionally, this crime ring spanned far more than just one city. Epstein's survivors have emerged from Florida, New York, France, and more. There was even a case brought against Epstein in West Palm Beach, Florida in the 2000s for soliciting underage prostitutes. Epstein only served 13 months for those allegations and broke his probation nearly every day of his house arrest. According to Michael Fiston, he reported Epstein over 66 times to the probation board. And the probation board basically told Michael Fiston, the private investigator hired by Bradley Edwards, to go pound sand. And furthermore, you can't solicit an underage prostitute, okay? Because there's no such thing as an underage prostitute. If the girl is not of age, she cannot consent. Therefore, she can't be a prostitute. Pretty simple. Number 4, Epstein and Maxwell would routinely threaten the abused women to keep them from speaking. Once a young woman had been lured into Epstein's orbit, it was nearly impossible for her to escape. Throughout the docuseries, his victims reveal that they were routinely blackmailed and threatened both professionally and personally from going to authorities. Maria Farmer even claims that Maxwell once told her that she knew Farmer went running on the West Side Highway in New York, and there were a lot of ways Farmer could die there without anyone getting suspicious. Even when these survivors would move, Maxwell and Epstein would still contact and berate them. Well, we know from Maria's own mouth, from her own account, what the experience was for her. She was hiding, running, moving, always trying to avoid these thugs, these disgusting people. And in turn, upending her life on a regular basis. She couldn't focus on her art. She couldn't focus on her career. She couldn't focus on anything. All she could do was stay one step ahead of these people who were constantly in pursuit of her. And yet Ghislaine Maxwell is still running around free. Ghislaine Maxwell has not been brought to justice yet. 1996, folks. I was 16 when that happened. All of those years have passed, and not a damn thing has been done to bring Ghislaine Maxwell to justice. Number 5. Epstein used his access to Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago to recruit survivors. At least one survivor, Virginia Roberts, says that she was introduced to Epstein through Trump's Mar-a-Lago. At the age of 16, Roberts was working at the resort. That's where one of Epstein's assistants noticed her reading a book on massage techniques and invited her to come work for Epstein, the typical offer used to lure young women. One of Epstein's assistants? Why don't we just say it straight up what it is? Ghislaine Maxwell is co-conspirator. Jeffrey Epstein's brains was the one who did it, okay? Let's be correct. Though Donald Trump claims that he ended his friendship with Epstein roughly 15 years ago, it's well known the two were friendly for a time, and that is correct. Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were buddies. There's no disputing that, there's no denying it, and anybody who's trying to is simply muddying the waters. Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were thick as thieves for quite some time. Fact. Number 6. Epstein was friends with other accused sexual abusers such as Harvey Weinstein, Kevin Spacey, and Woody Allen. One philanthropic trip to Africa featured Bill Clinton, Kevin Spacey, and Chris Tucker all on board Epstein's private jet. Another time during Epstein's post-probation party, Woody Allen arrived as one of his guests. Oh, not only just Woody Allen, let's talk about Katie Couric. Let's talk about that loudmouth little twerp, George Stephanopoulos, who gets on top of his ivory tower on a daily basis and bashes other people. Hey, Mr. Stephanopoulos, what were you doing palling around with a convicted sex offender, a serial child abuser, an all-around scumbag? Anyone going to ask George Stephanopoulos that ever? Another time during Epstein's post-probation party, Woody Allen arrived as one of his guests. And most chillingly of all, once while Epstein was on a trip with disgraced Hollywood producer and convicted rapist Harvey Weinstein, an underage girl ran panicked out of Weinstein's room. And we've talked about that here on the podcast as well. And imagine being in a house with Epstein and Weinstein. Talk about being around the axis of evil. These poor girls, man, I can't even begin to understand the torment. Much like Donald Trump, former President Bill Clinton has claimed that his friendship with Epstein ended years ago. But though Clinton has alleged that he never went to Epstein's private island, Little St. James, nicknamed Pedophile Island, that may not be the case. At least one former employee claims that Clinton made an appearance on the island. Okay, Decider, well, you're missing out on something here, okay? How about the fact that Virginia Roberts saw him on the island as well? Does that not matter? Is that not a credible claim? And again, nobody's saying that Bill Clinton was there abusing young girls. Nobody's making that statement. But the fact of the matter is, the man was on the island. The man was in New Mexico, and he lied about it. So the question now becomes, what are you covering up with your lies, sir? Number 7. Many believe that Epstein was in a sexual relationship with Les Wexner. Now, I've heard a lot of rumors about this, but again, I don't talk about rumors on this podcast. Unless they appear in publications, I don't talk about that stuff here on the podcast. Just like I had heard about the Ghislaine Maxwell and Bill Clinton affair, I don't run that stuff until it comes out in print. But there has been a lot of rumors along these lines. A lot of people, a lot of sources have said that Wexner was infatuated with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, did they have some sort of relationship? I don't know. I don't have concrete evidence to prove that one way or the other, but I will tell you there is a lot of speculation and from some pretty well-placed sources. So you could take it for what it's worth, one way or the other. It's a topic that we can speculate on, but I am not willing to make the leap yet until the evidence is completely and readily available that this was the case. But it is definitely an interesting part of the story. It's definitely something we can speculate upon. Throughout the late 80s and early 90s, Epstein was close personal friends with Les Wexner, the billionaire businessman who is the founder and chairman of L Brands. That group of businesses include The Limited, Victoria's Secret, Abercrombie & Fitch, Express, and Bath & Body Works. The pair were so close, many referred to Epstein as the boyfriend behind their backs. And that has definitely a ring of truth to it. I know people that have said the same thing, directly to me. But I can't confirm one way or the other if they were in a relationship, if they were, having an affair or whatever you want to call it. I don't know one way or the other, but it certainly is a rumor that will not go away. Epstein denied ever having a sexual relationship with the billionaire, but he did use his close connections with Wexner to exploit women. On at least one occasion, Epstein posed as a talent scout for Victoria's Secret to lure in a victim. More than one occasion. He did it multiple times. Him and Jean-Luc Brunel, they were running a serious scam when it comes to girls and getting them to think they're going for modeling gigs and then get abused. And that's another thing that we're going to talk about a little bit more later on is Jean-Luc Brunel and his absence from that documentary. For his part, Wexner has long maintained that he ended his friendship with Epstein in 2007. That's when Epstein reportedly stole $46 million from Wexner. Again, I don't buy that. I definitely don't buy that. Who steals $46 million and who gets it stolen from them and doesn't report it to the authorities? Come on, if Epstein was such a reprehensible guy, so disgusting, so gross, you hated him so much, you were so embarrassed, you would have reported him to the police. You didn't report it because you know that your finances are tied to his deviousness. And you, my friend, Mr. Wexner, if we lived in a fair world where the justice system operated correctly, would already be under indictment. For one of his birthdays, Epstein was allegedly gifted 12-year-old girls. And this is what they were talking about this in the documentary, and they didn't mention Jean-Luc Brunel, and it kind of bothered me, right? Because we all know that Brunel was his pipeline in Paris. We all know about MC2. We all know about Brunel's involvement, and we all know what Virginia said about Jean-Luc Brunel. So it's important that we name these scumbags. It's important that the people that are being credibly accused are put on blast. According to Virginia Roberts, one of the most outspoken of the Epstein survivors, there was an especially horrific side to Epstein's crimes. I would say it was a good year into, our relationship, our knowing each other, and he was laughing about the fact that his friend sent him 3 12-year-old girls that he had purchased from their parents, Roberts reveals in the docuseries. According to multiple sources, these children came from France and spoke no English. After they were molested and raped by Epstein, they were sent back to France the following day. And I want to make it clear, okay? Jean-Luc Brunel. That's the man that provided these 3 girls, according to sources. That's the man involved with Jeffrey Epstein and the abuse of the models. And that is the scumbag who is being credibly accused by multiple girls of assault and rape. Remember the name, folks. Jean-Luc Brunel. Number 9. Prince Andrew allegedly raped an underage girl on Epstein's pedophile island. One of Epstein's most famous and frequent friends was Prince Andrew, the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family. In 2004, Prince Andrew, the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, was spotted on Little St. James grinding on an underage girl clad only in her underwear. That young woman was Virginia Roberts. After taking a picture with Prince Andrew, Roberts claimed she was told by Maxwell that she had to perform the same sex acts on His Highness that she did on Epstein. Prince Andrew has denied these allegations. Yeah, look, Prince Andrew has a lot of explaining to do. We've talked about him ad nauseum at this point, but the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family certainly has a lot of explaining to do. What were you doing with Virginia Roberts? Why'd you take that? How's that picture even exist if you don't know her? All right, just some basic questions, right? And I think BBC did a pretty good job of exposing the guy, but there is zero chance his lawyers are ever going to let this bumbling fool get up there and answer questions from a guy like Bradley Edwards. Zero chance that ever occurs, folks. Now, as we move forward in the wake of this documentary and in the wake of Filthy Rich, it's important that we add context to the story, right? Because what they've done is they've opened the door for a lot of people to be interested in the case. Now, as content creators and people following the case, it's up to us to add whatever kind of context that we possibly can. And it's up to us to make sure that we stick with the facts. Because remember, folks, just remember, it's not what we know, it's what we can prove. And that's why it's so important to continue to build the profiles the way we do. It's so important to make sure that we catalog all of these stories so that the evidence is there. And then it's simply putting the pieces of the puzzle together. The legacy media doesn't want to do it. So independent content creators and independent journalists most certainly will. Later on tonight, I'll be doing the review of episode 1, and I'll be breaking down some of the finer points of the episode and some of the things that stood out to me. All right, everybody, if you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. And I'd like to thank all of the people who have donated to the GoFundMe. We're only about $600 away from our destination point. So thank you so much to everybody who has donated to the podcast. You guys are awesome. All of you are awesome. And I really appreciate everybody tuning in. And to all of the new listeners, well, buckle up. You folks are in for a wild ride. All right, I'll be back later on, everybody.